We are a global AE firm. We do the things that you would expect a large AE firm to do. So nothing so surprising there, but we do very well each year in the ENR rankings. We're always in the top 10, especially as a pure engineering firm. And we have all the market sectors that you would expect. I would say of note, this year, we've made quite a few acquisitions in the environmental engineering world, and have actually formed a new business unit within our company to focus exactly on environmental engineering. So if you're looking for a teaming partner or a new opportunity to support, certainly consider WSP for that. I represent also our federal programs group within WSP, and we certainly focus on delivering solutions to our federal clients, such as the Army Corps of Engineers. So we're going to talk about that today. And then I personally support a number of secure clients in our national securities practice. So if you have any interest in either teaming with WSP or talking further, please reach out. So that's where we are. I'm Ed. I talked about WSP. And if you would like me to begin, I'd like to talk about someone a little bit more important, and that would be the awesome Dave Morrow, who is reporting to us live, looks like from his basement studio. And it's certainly my honor to introduce Dave this morning. So Dave and I had the pleasure to work together from 2015 to 2018, I guess it was. Entirely too short of a time, but absolutely consider Dave as my battle buddy, and hopefully he as well. Dave is the senior civilian for the Baltimore district of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. His formal title is very long. It's the Deputy District Engineer for Programs and Project Management, affectionately known in USACE world as the DPM. But the GS-15 is essentially leading the massive program of Baltimore. Well over 1,100 people. They have every program you would expect within the Corps of Engineers, and then probably two others that most districts don't have, focused on actually producing clean drinking water. It's the only place in the world where the Army actually treats drinking water, and then a program that's focused on the intelligence community at RSFO. Dave's a superstar. He's been the DPM, I believe, since, what is it, Dave, 2014, 2013, something like that?
December 2011.
2011, man, I'm way off. All right, sorry about that.
Right there.
But prior to that, oh yeah, so you're a 10 years DPM, look at that. But prior to that, the chief of the Environmental and Munitions Design Center, which is a massive program in Baltimore that I'm sure you'll talk about today. And then what he didn't actually list in a little blurb he shared is also led the DC schools rebuild program, which was a tremendous program under General Joe Ballard at the time in the Corps. And then prior to that, he worked at IMCOM, worked at Fort Meade as a DPW. So Dave has a full experience in supporting our federal clients and doing all of that. The only problem with Dave is he's a graduate of the little university down in Virginia in Charlottesville. The University of Virginia, but as a Virginia Tech Hokie, I embrace that from him, and hope he can win a football game here in the future. So with all that, Dave, I turn the floor over to you, and really look forward to engaging. Oh, sorry, and one last thing, Dave, on a personal note, I certainly want to thank you for the time you take to speak to industry, because I know that there's many others that are asked to do this in the district, but you always find the time to do it and really speak to some of the questions, concern the industry has. So thank you for doing it. Over to you, Dave.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ed. Very kind words. You may want to take a number of those back in a minute, because I have two major problems. One, you just stole 90% of my thunder and talking about the Baltimore district, so there's not a lot left to say. Two, anybody that knows me knows that I practice just-in-time work, otherwise known as procrastination. So I actually shot slides out late last night, and of course the slides on the screen are different. So you're gonna watch me tap dance here as we go through two different presentations at the same time. But that's really fine. So one thing I do like to start out with, whenever I talk to folks, either internally or externally, is talk about the Corps of Engineers mission and vision, because you all are so much a part of delivering our program and strengthening the partnerships we have both with our stakeholders and with industry. So thank you very much for that. And whenever I say we, or whenever I talk about the Corps of Engineers or the Baltimore District, I absolutely include our private sector partners. In fact, one quick statistic, you're going to see way too many, or hear way too many numbers from me today, but probably 85 cents on the dollar that flows through the Baltimore District goes to private industry. We've got a large workforce. We've got a lot of great capability and capacity. We do a significant amount of in-house work, but it still pales by comparison to what you all do for us. So thank you. And I'm going to be changing my own slides on my own presentation, and I guess I'll just wait for you all to do the same. Or we can leave it on the castle the whole time and I can just talk.
We'll let you know when it shifts, Dave.
All right.
Hey, Dave.
So I did.
Dave.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's Mike. How about I make you presenter and you can share your slides?
Oh, if that's possible, sure.
Why don't we do that?
Anything is possible, Dave.
Yeah, but there's a potential operator error going on here. Does it work if you're up? Let's see. Amazing. Just let me know when it pops up.
Got it.
Okay. So what I wanted to do is provide a little bit of context, a little bit of background about our district, the programs, and how we do acquisition strategy before I enter into the forecast and talk about opportunities. So hopefully, the better you understand us, the better you can support us. And I'm leaving lots of time at the end for discussions and questions. So quick overview. As I said, Ed hit on a lot of this stuff, but Baltimore District, full service district, we're right in the middle of the North Atlantic Division. I did hear some of my friends from Philly and New York talk to you this morning. They did a great job, another tall bar to try to live up to. But we are full service district with a couple of unique service areas. One, as Ed mentioned, is the Washington Aqueduct, so we provide drinking water to DC and Northern Virginia. And then we've also got a HTRW, Hazardous Toxic Radiological Waste and Military Munitions Design Center. We also are one of 2 secure contracting offices in the Corps of Engineers, so we do a lot of support to the intelligence community. And then, of course, with the Chesapeake Bay, we take care of the upper half of the Chesapeake Bay, so incredibly important and ecological reasons. So our civil works program, while not that big, is very, very important and very high visibility. So here come all the numbers. Basically what this slide is showing is that we have a very, very consistent workload. So going back to the last 6 years and looking certainly into this year, we've been rock solid in our work. Now, some of that is because of the way some of our very large military construction projects are funded, but the bottom line is, from a big picture perspective, we have very predictable workload and very predictable programs, and that makes it much easier for you all to plan as well. So how does that workload break down? This is last year, fairly typical year. About 80% of the money that comes into Baltimore District supports the military in one form or another, Department of Defense. And the other 20% is either civil works or other agencies that we're supporting. Probably the one thing on this pie chart that is unique to Baltimore is that huge leasing program. We do a fair amount of leasing for typical Corps of Engineers type lease customers like Recruiting Command, Army Reserve, folks like that. But the vast majority of that program is for NSA and other members of the intelligence community, all in mostly in the DC metro area, but also across the United States. And again, Washington Aqueduct, that's the other unique mission area on that pie chart. But not all of that. That's 1.8 billion-ish. Typical year, when we go out and we award contracts, we're looking at about $1 billion, maybe a little bit more than $1 billion. And so I thought it might be interesting for you all to see how that breaks down financially. So construction, it's the vast majority of that. So about $900 million. And the little asterisk there, we obligate occasionally single projects that are $900 million, but almost always those are incrementally funded. And so what that does is it just flattens out the obligation curve. Not really important because those increments come every year and the expenditure curve, remains the same. The other, I think, trend, it's not a dramatic trend, but it definitely feels like it's continuing. And that is, we have a little bit of a bathtub effect with our construction work, meaning some really large projects and really small projects. So if I look at our portfolio right now, the vast majority of the dollars are on projects 200 million and over. The vast majority of the numbers are on construction projects $20 million and less. And that area in the middle is they come in ones and twos, but it's not the steady medium-sized work that we've had in the past. It's lots of small jobs, lots of huge jobs. AE service, typical year, about $70 million. That goes up and down, mostly multidisciplinary AE, unrestricted acquisitions. And what we really try to target our small business acquisitions and Brooks Act procurement are for more specialized services, value engineering, commissioning services, construction management services, those types of activities. Environmental service program, about $100 million a year, and then everything else that kind of gets swept up, approximately $30 million a year. So that's how a typical contracting year would break down for Baltimore. So the other way, I think it's interesting to look at our program, and if you can spend a little bit of time in our shoes and maybe understand some of the frustration that you may see in how some of our acquisitions are done. Where do we get our money? And so one way to look at it is it's either direct or reimbursable. And our direct funding comes through headquarters, typically direct from the Pentagon to the headquarters Corps of Engineers to the district, and it's much more predictable. And that's what most core districts look like. Civil works, most of our military construction stakeholders. The other way to look at our funding is reimbursable funding, and that's where our stakeholders, our customers are coming to the district directly by choice. And in Baltimore, about 3/4 of our work is reimbursable. And what that means is it's much less predictable, it's much more uncertain, and we need to be a lot more nimble and flexible to support them. So all of the installation support, whether it's sustainability, restoration, modernization, the old OMA work that we do, environmental cleanup work, environmental compliance work, planning work, that's all reimbursable, as are some of the military construction work that we do for the National Security Agency and for the Pentagon and out at Raven Rock for the Washington Headquarters Service. We're also a significant SRM customer for us is the Air Force at Joint Base Andrews, and we've been providing more support recently for the Navy at some of their smaller installations. And then the last area there, the other agency support, that along with being unpredictable and uncertain, that's probably our most volatile program. Happens to be way up right now. Ed mentioned the DC schools. That was a huge program about 12, 15 years ago. But those huge programs kind of come and go. So Bureau of Engraving and Printing is a big program for us right now. We're doing support for the office, for the the Director of National Intelligence, USDA, and the Park Service, among with a litany of smaller customers. So getting into the strategy, how do we deal with those reimbursable customers that represent 3/4 of our work? We don't really know when they're coming, but we know they're coming. We don't really know what the work is going to be, but we know, in generalities what it's going to be. And for the most part, we handle that two ways. Sole source 8A contracts for small requirements. We do a lot of that at year end, and that's been an unbelievably successful program for us. And then indefinite delivery type contracts, single award and multiple award task order contracts. So, some of the things that does for us, that along with that flexibility, broad flexible scope, we can cover a wide geographic area. We can get better buying power with our dollar through economy of scale with these larger contracts because we're packaging the work together. So that's all on the good side, but we've got to offset and balance that with Competition and Contracting Act and the fact that we want to maximize competition to the maximum extent that we can. And so that's always a trade-off that we're trying to determine as we decide when we procure and have these indefinite delivery type tools in our kit bag, and when we go with single contracts. So just a little bit of context and background on our programs and why we work, and now I'm going to launch into kind of the laundry list of opportunities, and I encourage people to ask questions, but if you ask detailed questions, you might get the same response. So I'll just give you that right now. At the end of this presentation, there's a website, contract opportunities. There's a list of points of contact for each of our major programs. We try to post all of our opportunities online, and we try to have all of our points of contact accessible and available. So I would encourage you, if you've got either acquisition specific or project specific questions, to reach out to those points of contact. Don't be shy. So if you look at our acquisition, some of this might be getting ahead of that, which I think is a good thing. Hopefully there's not too much overlap. What I've really tried to focus on, and I think I did it for the most part, is the stuff that really is just a glimmer in our eye. It's not out on the street yet. It may not be for a little while. Give you as much lead time as possible. I think I heard my friend from Philadelphia apologizing in advance because she had some opportunity that had been on there for several years and it was still on there. I'm not going to do that, but I've got some of those as well. So some of these may look familiar to you, but we really, really, really are going to do them now. So the first one is a good example of that, the $450 million design build multiple award task order contract. This is the tool that we use routinely to execute that unpredictable SRM work that comes from installations. And we had a $500 million contract that we are absolutely tapped out of. So we're in a little bit of a pinch here, but we're not going to get it awarded before the end of the fiscal year in time for year-end acquisition. So I'm not going to stress over that. We'll cover that gap primarily with 8A contracts. But this one we should be awarding in early FY22. We've got a series of single award task order contracts that are targeted towards specific customers. Some are already out on the street, so if you see that, hopefully that won't cause too much confusion. I think these are all still pending solicitation, but we've got a single award task order contract for our Washington headquarters service stakeholder out at Raven Rock. And then we've got two for the Washington Aqueduct, one focused on mechanical design build work and one primarily horizontal civil work. And then we've got one in the planning phase for 22 to support those Navy clients that I mentioned earlier. On the AE side, the Brooks Act procurement side, We've got 2 SATOCs, one that we're gearing up for the Washington Aqueduct. And right now, our capital program for the Washington Aqueduct is fairly small, probably on the order of $30 to $50 million a year in major deferred maintenance is what I would how I would characterize it. We do have a new general manager out at the aqueduct. The infrastructure is old and failing, so we're making a hard press, during all this discussion about infrastructure bills, et cetera, to do some major upgrades out at the Washington Aqueduct. Way too early to tell whether or not that funding will come through, but again, just give you a heads up that knock wood, that we may have some significant opportunities out there to do some significant facility upgrades. ECB 5, that stands for East Campus Building. This one has gotten a fair amount of attention from industry lately. This is the last planned mega project out at East Campus. That's the recapitalization of NSA, building new facilities for them, bring them a little further into the center of Fort Meade, and ultimately reduce some of their leasing footprint. East Campus Building 5, what makes this unique is this will be the permanent headquarters for the director of NSA. And as a result of that, the agency is looking to deviate from their tried and true design build strategy that's been so successful there recently, and they want to do design bid build. Now they've had a little bit of issue with that in the past, and they're extremely interested in the collaboration and the partnering between our construction contractors and our designers. So the strategy here, this is a $100 million IDIQ to do 100% design. It still gives them an escape valve in case anything goes wrong and they do need to go design build, although I think the likelihood of that is almost zero, because what they really want to do is early contractor involvement, sort of the Corps' version of CM at risk. And so very shortly, and I think you'll see it in the next slide or two, we'll be going out for the construction contract for ECB 5, and we want to select that contractor at about the time we're getting the 35% design for that building. So it won't look like the normal timeline. Just keep an eye on that, and if you're interested, reach out to our points of contact. And then we're planning a replacement set of AE contracts, multiple award task order contracts for our hazardous toxic radiological design center. And then also in the long range planning for our environmental programs, we've got a replacement for our maze as well, and I know Philly's got a maze contract out, so we'll make sure we deconflict those and not stress you all out too much. Typically we make you work over Christmas to develop all these proposals. That's also, I didn't mention that. That's part of our strategy, just to pay you back a little bit.
We appreciate that, Dave.
You're welcome. So again, a bit of a laundry list, and I don't want to read all of these. I'll try to go a little bit slower. There's only 2 pages of these, but it gives you a flavor of the single contract work that I think is relatively substantial in size that we have planned either this year end and rolling into the future. So you can see geography. The vast majority of our work is in our Baltimore District AOR. Almost all of the rest of it is going to be in the North Atlantic Division AOR, but of course we lead off here with something in Arizona, and I've got work here in Colorado as well. So we do have mission areas that are all over the country, and so again, makes it a little bit difficult if you're a firm. I think it's always good to keep an eye on what Baltimore District is doing, because it, even if you're a New England firm or Southeast firm, it's always possible that we end up doing work in those areas as well. So that the Huachuca job is for the Intelligence Command, so another Army member of the IC. Dietrich, USDA, that's worth mentioning. So USDA is a growing program for us. They've got really two areas. One, they're doing a lot of laboratory construction. That's in Omaha district and Baltimore district. There's one or two other districts that are supporting USDA in that program. We've got work at Fort Detrick and up in Pennsylvania. But then I think it's because Bureau of Engraving and Printing got the land transfer out at Beltsville Agricultural Research Center. And so as a result, we've sort of introduced ourselves or reintroduced ourselves to USDA out there. So we've got several large renovation projects also in the mix out at Beltsville as well. So again, interagency work. The rest of this is sort of our bread and butter work. Taxiway Whiskey, that's SRM work for the Air Force. The Atlantic coast of Maryland, that's a beach replenishment on our one little piece of shoreline. Our Civil Works program that we're responsible for. PFOA, PFAS, that's a growing area for us as we do both investigation and, in this case, some interim mitigation steps for the Air National Guard. RECAP, that's an IC support out at Buckley Space Force Base in Colorado. We're doing some major recapitalization for them. Typical dredging program, more PFAS work, more MILCON work. You know, this is sort of our standard bread and butter type of programs. Again, everything should be on the website, and specific questions, you know, please reach out. So moving on down, here's some of that USDA renovation work I was mentioning at Beltsville. Some of that is pretty significant. And then we've got a fair amount of MILCON coming, mostly out at Fort Detrick, at either Humphreys Engineering Center adjacent to Fort Belvoir, or Fort Belvoir or Fort Meade. The MILCON work is, you know, I put it in there with the predictable work, but it's been a little bit volatile, not so much if we're going to do the job, but when we're going to do each of these jobs. So we've tried to be very structured about our planning process and making sure that all the programming documents are in good condition and in the president's budget. But that whole process, you know, can take 3 or 4 years. And of course, mission requirements shift and change, and funding streams shift and change, and administration priorities shift and change. So this is the current acquisition schedule for these MILCONs, but just know that it's quite possible that some of them could shift a fiscal year to the right. One couple that maybe worth pointing out here, a replacement steam sterilization plant at Detrick. That's going to be a small but very complicated project. I mentioned the East Campus Building 5. You know, we're in the acquisition for that, and at the same time, we're in the acquisition phase for East Campus Building 4. So this is the design, build, construction acquisition there for $600-700 million project. That needs to be awarded next year. We've got a set of barracks, 2 barracks buildings at Fort Meade. Going out in 22, those are 100% design, so those will be design, bid, build, and a few others here. Then getting toward the bottom, some of the larger and maybe less common jobs to keep an eye on. Bureau of Engraving and Printing, that's the new currency production facility. We're planning a construction contract award in FY23, but that's going to be a significant acquisition, so that will start well in advance. And then we recently awarded our second reactor decommissioning, major reactor decommissioning project. We've done a few small ones earlier at Fort Belvoir called the SM1. And then we're beginning the acquisition process for the SM1A, and that's the last major reactor that we plan decommissioning in the Corps of Engineers inventory, and that one is up at Fort Greely, Alaska. So again, I mentioned that we work hard to try to keep our contracting opportunities online. So this is our public-facing web page. Big old button there on the right-hand side. Should be hard to miss, although I get a lot of calls saying, how do I find it? So the red circle does not actually exist on the website, and the blowout for the URL doesn't as well, but should. If you speak Corps of Engineers, that's North Atlantic Baltimore. That's what the little NAB stands for. And then, of course, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and Army.mil. So should be easy to find, and hopefully the slides will be up online. And then when you drill in on that button, the front page will show you the points of contact that I mentioned earlier, and then the specific forecast opportunities, as well as our existing contracts are there. And the existing contracts, the existing IDIQ contracts, I think those are that's an important resource for you if you're looking for partners, if you're looking for subcontracting opportunities, things like that. Those are contracts that we have in our toolbox that we're going to on a regular, frequent basis to deal with that again, that work that we know is coming, but we don't know what it really is going to be in detail until it shows up. So I think we're pretty good on time. So lots of time for questions, and if you keep them high level and broad, then I can, talk and philosophize and chit chat with you. If you make them detailed and specific, I'm going to send you to project managers.
Mike, do you mind if I ask Dave the first question?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah, so everyone, please get your questions into the chat so we can get them to Dave, because we need to keep the pressure on him. But Dave, so an easy question and then a more sort of broad question to follow your guidance. You showed the MAIS and the HTRW, or the environmental AE contract. I think you had the MAIS first in 22 and then followed up by the environmental engineering HTRW in 23. Is that intentional? We'd heard previously that those are flipped.
I don't know. So if that was the easy one, I failed. But yeah, no, reach out to Mike. Basically, we try to estimate our capacity requirements. We typically have a 5-year ordering period on those. And then we watch our burn rate, we watch our workload forecast, and we try to time them accordingly. It's not uncommon for us to run out of capacity well under 5 years. And so that's what adjusts the schedule. So it's quite possible that because of our burn rate on our AE, HTRW AE, that it may be going out sooner. I don't think, the MAIS is planned pretty far out. I think we're in good shape capacity-wise. But again, if somebody walks in the door with a big requirement, a year-end award requirement, and we go to that tool, we can burn through capacity much faster than we anticipated.
Okay, so we'll keep watching those. The broader question is, I don't know if you can speak to Mid-Bay any, but pretty excited to start seeing that project, the next Poplar Island, the Chesapeake Bay kickoff. And Mid-Bay is entitled or planned for James and Barren Island next, but I didn't know if you had anything you could share with the group here for that.
So we're in design phase for Mid-Bay, and for those that are not as familiar, that's an ecosystem restoration project. So we have these historic islands in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay that have been eroding for hundreds and hundreds of years. Some of them have disappeared. They're an important ecosystem piece of infrastructure, primarily because it's on the Atlantic Flyway. So a lot of migratory birds, get tremendous benefit from restoring these islands. The other added benefit, state of Maryland does not allow open water placement of dredge material. So as we dredge the approach channels to the Baltimore Harbor, this gives us an opportunity to make beneficial use of that dredge material and restore these mid-Chesapeake Bay islands and restore that ecosystem and that habitat. So it's like a win-win-win situation. So it's a great project, great deal. Poplar Island is built out. It's going to be able to continue to receive dredge material for some time, but it has a limited lifespan. You know, when the island's restored, it's done, and it can no longer support dredge material placement. So the next one down the road, James and Barron, mid-Chesapeake Bay Island, as Ed Chamberlain mentioned. We're in the design phase for that. And there's a budgeting for civil works is an art form. It's not a science by any means. So we're putting it in the budget submission for 23. We are putting it in for construction now. We're putting it in the budget submission for 22 work plan. That's sort of a earmark light version that Congress worked out with the Corps of Engineers after earmarks went away, and then we'll put it in the work plan if we don't get funded in the president's budget for 23. We'll put it in the 23 work plan. So we're taking 3 bites of the apple to try to get construction funding no later than FY23. We think because of the importance of that project, the visibility with the congressional delegation, et cetera, that one of those will come through. But I'm not sure other than construction start in 23, and this is a decades-long project because of the nature of the maintenance dredging cycle. Is there something more specific than that?
No, that's great.
We have 2 questions in the chat room. First one is, what are the civil works contracts planned for 2021 and 2022?
So, I mean, it's a whole portfolio of work, but in big picture, it's mostly O&M. So we operate about more than a dozen dams and reservoirs in our area. That infrastructure needs to be maintained and repaired. So we've got, as well as federally maintained levee systems. So we've got some design and construction that is more in that rehab arena. We've got our traditional maintenance dredging in our civil works program. I mentioned the Atlantic Coast beach renourishment. That's also a flood storm damage risk reduction project. So our civil works program, the next big construction program that we have is that mid-Chesapeake Bay Island that was mentioned. We just got a chief's report approved for flood stream restoration in the Anacostia water system. So we should be doing design and construction for that if it gets approved through the budgeting process. But pretty typical program for us, civil work. So if you look at what we've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years, that's what we'll probably be doing for the next 2 or 3 years, with the exception of Chesapeake Bay or Mid-Bay Island.
Okay. Now the second question is there any thought about separating CM services from AE contracts to give smaller CM firms a chance to prime those services?
So, yeah, and that's sort of a back and forth issue more at the enterprise level. So in Baltimore District, we've done them as service contracts, and we've done them as Brooks Act procured professional services contracts. We can do them as service contracts, but we have to explain and get approval from headquarters and essentially promise to never do anything that even closely resembles professional services. So the small cost savings that we might get from not requiring liability insurance and those sorts of things, probably not worth it. And when we have a Brooks Act procured CM service contract, then we have the ability to do things like, maybe review shop drawings or submittals that are extensions of design, and that we do want somebody that's a professional engineer or something to review and sign off on those. So it gives us a little bit more flexibility. When we do our construction management service contracts, even when we do them through the Brooks Act as AE contracts, recently they've all been small business set-asides, and occasionally 8A set-asides. But again, not sole source 8As, Brooks Act procured competitive 8As.
Okay, we've got one from Peter Duran. He's asking what's the schedule for the stream restoration project?
So the study got approved. So now we have an approved project that puts it at the very beginning of the queue for that entire budgeting approval process. So it's unlikely that you'll see that design construction, what Civil Works calls PED, planning, engineering, and design funding. We'll keep putting it in the budget, and it's probably not going to get in the president's budget. So then it would be a work plan, a potential. It's not an earmark, but it's called the work plan approved project. So I think the earliest would be 22 and more likely 23, but it's ready. As soon as somebody says we've got funding to do it, we can execute. I love that title, Sweet Door Opener. I'm sorry, Karen Kopp just popped on the screen, and that's her. So I'm going to change my job title to something like that.
Well, that's all the questions that we have in the chat room at this point.
Oh, I can always ask Dave some more. You just let me know what our time limit is.
Well, actually, I think we're going to begin to wrap up here, but and if you do have a question, yeah, we can do another one. But Dave, I do have a comment. I do have a comment. You kind of opened yourself up for this one. You mentioned about getting those RFPs in, the day after a holiday. Why is that exactly? I can't tell you how many Christmases or Easter day or right the day after a major holiday. It's like I'm working all on the RFP responses. There's got to be a reason.
Oh yeah, I mean there is a reason, and I'm not. I guess I'm apologizing for it, but what I would tell you to do is push back, because that's ridiculous. All of our lives are way too complicated. But the reason is because we're human also. And so there's this mad push on the in-house government side to get everything done and toss it over the fence to you all before the holiday period. And then, wouldn't it be great? We come back all, rested and revised, and look, we got a stack of proposals to get back into and review. It's just human nature, and it's not right, and it's not fair. And when I see it, I do push back, because now where I think you all need to maybe take some of the blame is very often, let's say we put something out for 30 days and we want to push it out right before Thanksgiving. So we say, well, we'll be nice and we'll give them 75 days or something like that, and we won't ask for it until the end of January. Well, so you got all this extra time that does include the holidays. Doesn't necessarily mean you need to ruin your holidays, because you've got more time than what we would normally give you. But I also understand that, you got the time, you're going to use it. It's like any vacuum that's going to get filled up quickly.
Yeah, that's for sure. I appreciate that feedback. Ed, did you have another question you wanted to ask to get me out of this mess I got myself into?
No, Dave, I just want to again thank you on behalf of SAME for always supporting us. It really helps us understand what you're thinking, what you're wrestling with, and how we can assist. So thank you.
Awesome.
All right. And thank you, Mike, and others for letting me procrastinate and still get my slides in. So I appreciate that.
Not a problem. All right. Well, Karen, I'm thrilled that you're here just in time for a short break, because we've been keeping everybody pretty engaged for for a couple hours here. So we're going to take a break till 12:15. Peter, I see you've joined by video. Did you want to share anything before we take a break?
No, but I got to tell you, Mike, that I think the speakers in the morning have been terrific. They've really given us a lot of valuable information, so I want to thank them.
Awesome. Well, listen, for those attending the conference, go grab a beverage, grab a sandwich. You're not going to want to miss a single minute of what Karen shares with us. So we will be back and started right sharp at 12:15 East Coast time.